Today on Hot Track RC, we're going to take a body-off look at 3 gold pans on the tower. 2 are Edingers, one's a 2013 classic re-release. We'll break it all down for you, so stick around. The experience of buying an RC10 gold pan in the early 1980s just can't be overstated. When you went into a hobby shop, a racetrack, or even a warehouse as I did and walked out with this gorgeous box and this car inside, that was an experience that you just never forgot. I've got 3 gold pans on the stand we're going to take a look at. This first one is my original 1984 East Edinger car, produced in Santa Ana, California. It's a time capsule. It's got all original electronics, still runs off of the original Magnum Junior control. Next up is my best friend's car. He got his car a couple weeks before mine. Once I saw his car, there was no turning back, and the rest is history. And on the top, we've got the 2013 Classic re-release. All of these cars have different electronics, different setups, so let's take a look. So you're looking at this car saying, Bob, that's not an original wing. And you're right. We never ran the wings back in the day. That was an unnecessary complication from my friend and I's perspective. So those wings are long gone, and I've replaced it with a more modern wing here. But same wing wires, buttons, and all. So let's pop the top off this, and there you go. So right off you see rheostat speed control. You see FM radio. And, of course, an old Futaba servo. Yep, that's the way we ran them. Brushed, of course. And starting from the front, a couple things that are interesting to me. One is the original kits came with an anti-roll bar. And a lot of the guys didn't put them on. Or they didn't run them. And I had mine on for a period of time, and I took it off, but of course I always kept it. So that's pretty cool, but you might notice that the re-releases, none of the re-releases have been issued with a sway bar, front or rear. Now, on the rears, those did not come with the kit. And to my knowledge, unless it was like the very first cars that came out of the factory at East Edinger, they never came with the sway bar. However, Team Associated did offer the rear sway bar as an aftermarket part, and then other companies did as well, of course. I've seen very few with the rear sway bar on, but there are some out there. You'll run across them on eBay and other places occasionally. I never had one of those. So other things to look at here, of course, I've got a front bumper on it. This is the Pro Line front bumper. I love this front bumper. I still love it. It saved this car from so much abuse. And, I mean, the nose piece is in very good condition. This is all original. So, you can see that this car has been used. And, you know, the bottom of the pan attests to that, particularly back by the transmission and motor. So, this is the real deal. But the inside of the pan, I was pretty meticulous about my cars. I kept them clean. I was running the transverse battery setup because I had the rheostat speed control in here. And, you know, this car was always heavy. My car was never a light car. I had the full-size servo and the rheostat with the second servo. I usually ran 7-cell NiCads on this. And I got some pretty hot motors back in the day. So the car would move along pretty good. Other things to note, you know, back in the day, we were running 32 pitch gears. That's what came with these kits. They were really noisy. So the classic kit replaced that and went to a 48 pitch, which is a nice upgrade. So anyway, this car, it's not a hot performer, but if you watch the World's Car Part 3, this car is running on the carpet track here at NorCal Hobbies, and it did manage to get around the track, but it was kind of astonishing how slow the servo is on this. There's nothing wrong with it. It is just crazy slow, and you had to start your turn way before you actually need to get around a corner. I really like this car. This is my best friend's car. There's been a lot of changes made on this car. So this is an example of what can happen to an RC10 over the years when you adapt it for different types of racing. This car is set up for carpet track racing. And, you know, none of these cars survived with the original tires. We used those things up in the first month, right? And we took those spike tires out on the pavement, and there was nothing left of them. So, you know, this car has been set up with carpet track tires, 2.2-inch wheels by J Concepts. Really nice conversion for these cars. And, you know, starting up front, again, I still have this Proline bumper on here, and I run that at the carpet track. That saves the front end of this. So I highly recommend those. They're still available here and there on eBay. Got the carbon fiber shock towers and the J Concepts bell cranks. Really like those. Super smooth, super stiff. Of course, there's no servo saver on those. So gone to a servo saver on the servo itself. And of course, modern radio. In this case, Noble 4, a lipo and brushless setup here. This is not a high-end system, but it really gets this car around the track. It's a Castle Sidewinder 3, and it's running about a 10.5 turn motor. So this car gets up and goes, and to the point where you do have some problems with wheelies. I mount the battery up front here, and helps a bit, but it's still got insane acceleration. As a result, these 6-gear transmissions had a problem with stripping out the idler gears, and that has happened to me on this. So be careful. I think they say don't go, less than 13.5 turns on these transmissions. Probably 17.5 is really the right size motor for these cars. Again, carbon fiber shock towers in the back. A mod that I make, which I really like, is the B6 series wing mount that I had to drill into the shock tower. Really helps if you're going to drive this car, because every time you roll with the old wire mounts, they just bend, and you're looking silly when your wing's all crooked, and then you bend it back over and over again, and the wing wires break. This just solves that problem entirely, and it looks really good. Of course, the thing you have to do is you have to cut your body here. And this is probably sacrilege, because this is an original 80s Andy painted body, which has been cut. But, you know, it's a car that was meant to be driven, so there you go. Anyway, one thing that I had to do on this car, as I'm caretaker of this car at the moment, is switch over the rear axles to 3/16-inch shafts. The original step shafts really aren't available for any 2.2-inch wheels, so to get those modern wheels and tires on these cars, you got to switch over to the 3/16-inch shafts. So what I did here is I've got the CVA joints that come with the World's Car reissue. And the original World's Car didn't have these 3/16-inch shafts. The original World's Car had the original axle shafts. But the reissue in 2014 had these CVA joints with 3/16ths. That really solves a lot of problems, and the CVAs are really nice. Dog bones still on the inside that made up with the original transmission, no problem. So I love this car. One of the problems with these cars is getting them low enough. Really, I've tried getting the ride height down to 18 millimeters and things like that. The car just doesn't like it. I ride it a little higher, around 22 millimeters. It's just the way these cars were set up and designed. Of course, this car and my car still have the original narrow front end A-arms on them. So, you know, this is what those gold pans were like in the day, with a couple little upgrades. But You know, this is still very much an early 80s gold pan. And it's a blast to drive in. Oh, by the way, this is a modern servo. The steering response is super fast. No issues. So lots of fun to drive this car. And here it is, the 2013 Classic re-release. This is my one shelf queen. All the other cars will be driven. This car will never be driven. And actually, this car was purchased by my best friend back in 2013. I've become the caretaker of it. I finished it up where some things were left undone. But this car just brings back so many memories. And I've set it up with electronics that are mostly period correct, or at least give me that nostalgic feel of the electronics that I wanted at the time but couldn't afford. And so here it is. This is actually my friend's Novak 1 speed control. Fully functional, and it's just so cool. When he got that, I was just over the moon for that. But it was really kind of beyond my reach. And then this Polaris receiver turned out to be, the right setup for the controller that my friend always used on this car, which was another Magnum Junior. It's an AM 27 megahertz. So that fit the bill. I found that for this car, and I really love the Novak Orange. And it's a little bit newer receiver, but I think it still looks really good in here. Could have been replaced a little later on. And then I still have the original, period correct Futaba in here. I'd love to get a micro-sized Novak front servo, but really hard to get these days, kind of expensive. So this is a new old stock Futaba. It's correct for the car. And then we've got a Kyosho red brush motor, of course, period. And, the tires are what came with the Classic kit. Those are very close to what we ran originally and wore out really quickly. That's what we've got going on here. So here's my best friend's car and mine back to back. And you might notice that I dyed a lot of the plastic parts blue. Some of it turned kind of purple. That was all done back in the 80s. And it's a testament to how much of the plastic's original. I loved the wing nuts that came with the early Edinger cars. A lot of people run knockoffs that came with the kit also, but the early Edingers came with those wing nuts, which is what's on the box, and so I thought that was super cool. Had to dye those as well. Here's the difference between the axles. So here's the straight 3/16 inch axle, which I stole off a World's Car part. And then here's the stepped axle. Here's my original 1984 gold pan with all original electronics, including rheostat speed control. Please ignore the LiPo pack there. Of course, I left the original team associated connectors because I couldn't bear to tear those out. Here's the Magnum Junior. Fire that up and switch it on. Notice the speed of this servo. At the time, this seemed totally normal to me. And, bashing out in front on the street, it was okay. But boy, is it slow by today's standards. And look at that rheostat go. Yeah, it's moving, it's doing its thing. And honestly, it works just fine. So, I just love the originality of this car because it just brings back so many memories. I'll never change it. But I don't mess with nightcap batteries anymore, so LiPos are just too nice. Of course, you got to time it and make sure you don't run them flat, but I'm pretty careful with that. Here's the gold pan with the LiPo in it. You might be saying to yourself, Bob, why are you using Velcro? Well, you're right, but I really like how quickly I can move the battery around. Try different weight distributions for jumps. I can even move the ESC up front. I can rotate the battery 90 degrees and put it back into the bulkhead. So it's really nice for flexibility. I've never had a problem with it popping out, even on hard landings. Just get enough Velcro down there and it's pretty secure. So let's fire this up. I got my Noble 4 here. It's powered up. Turn my car receiver on. And there it goes. So speed of the front servo is just awesome. No issue there. Of course, it's totally modern. And plenty of power on this bad boy. And plenty of brake. So this car is, as far as a 1984 Gold Pan can be, it's pretty dialed on the track. And last, but certainly not least, the 2013 Classic re-release. And I'm powering it with old electronics. This is my buddy's Magnum Jr. Does not have the in-point adjustments like mine had. And it's an AM instead of an FM. So this is an AM system. And let's fire it up. And if you remember these old Novaks, the wheels would always spin when you turned them on. That you just had to know that they were going to run away from you if you weren't holding the car. So, alright, there's servo control. Seems like it might be a little faster than my old one, but, you know, it's pretty similar. And the Novak speed control. And the brake. Anyway, that was the setup I wanted back in the day, man. But now I have it, and it's just going to sit on the shelf. If you want to see these cars run on the track, sans the classic, of course, click on the World's Car Part 3 episode. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time!